Welcome to another edition of We Need to Talk About Movies. Brought to you by BanterFlix.com. And now, here's your host, Jim McLean.
Hello. Yes, I am indeed your host, Jim McLean, the editor-in-chief of the BanterFlix movie review website. Welcome to the latest episode of We Need to Talk About Movies. If this is your first time checking out this podcast, you might be wondering what it's all about. Well, the clue's in the title. Each week we talk about a specific movie. It might be a new release, might be a cult classic, it might be a film you've never heard of before. But I gather together some contributors and we chat about the film. Sometimes we do get a little bit spoilerific, but we try our best to have a little bit of fun along the way, and hopefully you guys enjoy it too. This week, we are going to be talking about Michael Bay's 1996 feature, The Rock, following the sad news last week of the passing of Sir Sean Connery at the age of 90 years of age. And we thought we would pick out a film within his impressive back catalogue. We could have talked about any of his outings as 007. We all know that he's Indy's dad. There's The Hunt for Red October. There was loads of films we could have talked about. But as a team, we decided we would talk about Bay's feature. It's a film I absolutely loved when I was younger, and I definitely enjoyed taking the opportunity to look back at it. On this recording, I'm joined by our very own Darren, Vincent, and Joe McElroy. I think the last time we were all together was the now infamous Life Force podcast recording. And this was just as eclectic as that recording, so hopefully you'll enjoy it. But before we get into this week's pod, let's have a look at Bay's film. Let's have a look at The Rock.
Hi. I'm an agent with the federal FBI. I'm Stanley Goodspeed.
But of course you are. At least he got his name right.
Of course I am.
And you have an emergency.
That's right.
And you need my help.
Exactly right.
Coffee.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Offer me coffee.
Oh, yes. Well, that was in fact going to be my next... Can we get a cup of coffee in here, please?
So that's a clip of The Rock, and joining me now is two men who definitely took home the prom queen, along with myself, of course. That is BanterFlix's very own Darren Vincent.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm tempted to kind of call you Darren Goodspeed, based on your Zoom link, but I won't. I'll call you Darren Vincent because that'll confuse people, and we don't want to confuse people. And the man who I'm sure at some point throughout this podcast will bring up a Sean Connery impression. Mine isn't very good, so I'll keep mine for later. But it's BanterFlix's deputy editor, Joseph McElroy.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, Money Penny.
Yes, it's already begun, hasn't it?
Oh my! I can't do a very good Sean Connery. Mine just ends up somehow going a bit Indian, and it all goes wrong. So that's why it's probably for the best of the world if I don't do the rest of this podcast in my Sean Connery voice. But I do have my little vodka martini to honor the late great Sir Sean Connery, who sadly passed away, well, by the time this podcast has been released, last week at the age of 90. And we thought we would celebrate him, and I don't want to say honor because that's not the right word, because I don't know if Sean Connery would want to be honored by BanterFlix and our usual nonsense and ramble, but there is a lot of films we could talk about in his back catalogue. And I'm sure at the end of this podcast, when we get to any other business, if you are watching this, we will talk about some of those other films, maybe not in as much detail, but I kind of thought, and I put it out the feelers to you guys, what films could we talk about? As I say, there was loads, but I thought one that often gets overlooked is the 1996 Michael Bay feature, The Rock. and there was agreement. Joe, you and I had seen this, but we were surprised that Darren Vincent hadn't seen The Rock.
Yeah, it was one of those films where, unfortunately, it had passed me by for so many years. I'd seen it recommended. Now it's always on Now TV in any collection. And to be honest, the real reason I hadn't watched it is that I thought it might be quite heavy. It might be like a serious political sort of thriller that shakes the heart of government. But boy, was I wrong.
Can I just ask, Darren, like, I'm looking on IMDb here right now, right? And I'm looking at the film's poster. What part of that screams tough political thriller? We've got Nick Cage doing that Nick Cage look. We've got Sean with a gun. Ed Harris looking quite kind of stern and serious. But I don't really know kind of what part of that makes you think that would be
I just always assumed. I just thought these were very, three very heavy hitting actors that, would suit a very sort of political, like a military drama, something that is, is intense. And The Rock, I thought The Rock might have been like a unit or squad's nickname. And, there was some bad blood there. Not once did I think that the film would involve, we'll come to that later, I'm sure, in the video, but there's certain scenes in this film where I'm like, how did that get in here? And why are these three involved? So definitely a surprise, and I'm raging. I didn't watch this when I was younger. But
Darren, can I ask, just before we get into the nitty gritty, how far into watching The Rock did you realize that this is not a nitty gritty political thriller?
Probably the first scene with Nicolas Cage, and that was probably the first. When he's doing the introduction to his character, I think.
When he literally has like the air gun and literally,
yes.
Yeah, and he's just getting his Beatles LP.
Yeah, that when I realized, right, and then I heard his name was Stanley Goodspeed, and I was like, right, here we go. I've got this so wrong. Here's me thinking it's like, Serpico or something like that, and it's flipping,
Well, for anyone who doesn't know, or maybe like Darren has always thought that this is a tense political thriller in the throe of A Few Good Men or something like that. I think the tagline says it all. Alcatraz, only one man has ever broken out. Now 5 million lives depend on 2 men breaking in. It screams A Few Good Men to me. That's all I can say. But Joe, you and I had both seen this. I don't think I saw this in the cinema. I don't think so. I was 14 when this was out back in 96. I was probably the perfect age for it. And I remember it being discussed at school. Now, this is where it then becomes apparent that I'm the old man of this group. How old were you when this came out? And I'm assuming you didn't get to see this in the cinema.
No, I never got to see it in the cinema because I was only 6 when it was released in cinemas, so there was no chance of that happening. But I think it was a bit like yourself. I probably was in late primary, early secondary school, and it was like the talk of the playground after it was shown like on BBC the weekend or the night before.
Can I just ask, were you all just sitting around the playground going, have you seen this really tense political thriller called The Rock?
Yeah, I know. And then I was like, what film were you watching? Because I got a completely different viewing experience. I didn't have the Darren Vincent experience. I had the everyone else experience. But yeah, it was just sort of playground chat, and I watched it like the weekend before, and it was just like, wow, this is amazing. This is like the best thing ever. And then obviously rewatching it, well, I don't really feel the same way, but I do like it. I do enjoy it.
I have a lot of love for this. This, if I'm right, I think is Michael Bay's second feature. He had done a lot of music videos. He did Bad Boys, and then he did this, and then he would go on, of course, to do Armageddon and Pearl Harbor. I think there's another feature in there. I know there's Bad Boys 2 and all that kind of stuff. But he arrives with Bad Boys and with The Rock pretty much fully formed as a filmmaker. Okay, yes, you've got the influence of isn't it Brockheimer is producing this, and Don Simpson, who had passed away in the film, is dedicated to him. But he pretty much arrives fully formed as a filmmaker. All the kind of cliched stuff that we've come to love or hate, in my sense, with Michael Bay, they're all there pretty early on. The panning camera, all that kind of stuff, the gratuitous use of military and the upbeat kind of score, military tinge score, it's all there. But I guess it's just that sense I can't remove myself from that nostalgia. I was talking about this whenever Sean Connery passed. I was talking about this to my mum, and one of the first things I was talking about The Rock, because we're talking about The Rock, and my mum was like, "Oh, you love that film? You were really obsessed with it." And that's probably one of those first films I remember kind of getting on VHS, or I can remember just be like, right, let's watch it, boom, watch it again, and watching it to death. I just adored it. It's just that thing. I guess if I was watching this completely cold, a bit like Darren, other than being disappointed that it wasn't the film I thought it was going to be, at what point is Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise, at what point do they end up all in a courtroom and talking about, the legalities of keeping people at the Rock and all this kind of stuff. I guess if I didn't have that nostalgia for it, I would be a lot more, I think I would be a lot more critical about it. So this is where you come in, Darren. So you've only watched this. We've kind of talked around it. We have a film that's set in Alcatraz. There's a biological threat that's being threatened by Ed Harris's character on the people of San Francisco, and only Nick Cage and Sean Connery and a group of SAS men can save the day. But I don't really think there's much more that we need to really say about, the film itself. But Darren, having just watched this, of the three of us here, after getting past that disappointment that it wasn't going to be a tense political thriller, that there was going to be no courtroom scenes, there was not going to be Sean Connery, on one side and Nick Cage on the other, what did you think of the film?
Well, sitting down to watch it, as I told you, I ended up having to watch it over two sort of split viewings. And I think on the second half of the film, I was actually reminding myself of what actually happened in the first, because like all Michael Bay's films, it jumps quite a lot. You get maybe 2 or 3 seconds of a quick scene. So much happens. And it can really be, the film can really be summed up in that initial, there's an amazing, I'm going to say amazing, because technically it's amazing, and I don't know how long it took to create, but the chase scene from start to finish is one of the most over-the-top, unbelievable chase scenes, and it's a chase scene which is worthy of like chasing an end villain. I did not expect the first 25 minutes of the film to have this type of sort of explosive start. But like all Michael Bay films, rather, they're sort of aimed at that sort of teenage boy market. And I think maybe that's, now, I'm a bit older. I'm in the 30s, and, from sins, I'm afraid to admit, but it was a bit lost on me. Now, I do remember going to see the first Transformer film when I was 16, 17. And I did have that feeling of, yes, this is targeted at me, maybe a few years younger than me. But watching The Rock now, maybe because I didn't have that experience when I was younger watching it, I was sort of picking holes in it. But the more as it went on, I started to sort of, put that to the side and just enjoy it. It's one of those films you just put your brain in a box and you just let it go. And for all its sort of, bad choices in the script, and, all Nicolas Cage shouting his questions and then shouting the same question again because he didn't get the response the first time.
His lack of swearing, don't forget his lack of swearing.
Yes, he says stuff like gee whiz, and he refuses to, he sort of refuses to break his code of conduct and everything. Sean Connery is quick to spot that, and he's brilliant. I think he's very good in that. He basically plays himself. He doesn't, I think when did a bit of research for this, he got script writers in to rewrite his own lines, but I think he probably just looked at them and said, right, I'm just going to say whatever comes to mind, because it's all sort of ad-libbed. Any of his lines just seem very, off the cuff. But yeah, I to be honest, I think it's worth a watch again. If not for the sort of stupidity and the sort of wee quips that they come up with, but just for the real technical, the set pieces really make the film.
It is from watching it again, I rewatched this last night because I knew we were going to be podcasting about it. And when you look at it now, you see that as a film, it is designed to go from set piece to set piece. And that's how it's, you know, we've got our characters here, we've got to get them there, we're going to have a big set piece there. And you see that in its DNA. I think the term Hollywood producers use is like, it's like the whammo scale. Every 15 minutes, you need a big action set piece because people will be sitting there munching popcorn. They'll be getting into a bit of a lull with dialogue and character development and interesting characters. And they're like, right, we just want more action. And you see that. There's no getting away from that. But the set pieces are handled well. I think, you know, as Michael Bay has went on over the years, like you look at, was it 6 Underground?
Oh, the Netflix one.
Because I think Joe and I think you and I reviewed this on the pod, one of the last few we did in an actual studio setting as physically together. And you see where Michael Bay has went, and you see where he went with the Transformers series, where it's just kind of over the top spectacle, you know, pyrokinetics, whatever those things are. I can never say that word. All that stuff going off everywhere and getting as much madness on camera. He's kind of went, you know, so far from that, and this does feel, while it looks over the top and it is kind of silly at times, it does feel like a very restrained Michael Bay compared to what we see now. And you know, apparently it is his favorite of his films. You know, he just doesn't love those Transformers films the way that maybe Darren loves them. I know, you know, Darren, 16-year-old you would have loved the first Transformers and Megan Fox.
That's it. No, well, I remember seeing that film in the cinema, and I had to walk home from the cinema from the Odyssey, which was about 40 minutes walk every night, getting out at midnight. And I remember being like, I'm going to be like Sam in the Transformers films. I'm going to save up and I'm going to buy a car and I'm going to go out with Megan Fox. And I eventually got my first car at the age of 28. So it took me 12 years after seeing Transformers to get the car.
But you got your Megan Fox.
Got my Megan Fox, yeah. But the car shit. It doesn't like turn into a robot or anything. But
well, not maybe there's time yet. You know, maybe it's just a bit slow. Yeah. But let's go on ahead, Joe.
No, I was just saying, I'm glad that Darren read Transformers as a romantic comedy then. You know, that's what he took away from it.
Yeah.
I did, yeah. Between a man and his car.
Oh, I?
The love story of a man and his car. Anyway, Joe, so you were 6 when this first came out. You kind of, like I was kind of saying, I remember this being talked about in my school. I remember everyone talking about how much they loved Ed Harris's character because he's a villain, but he's not really a villain. His motives are good, and that is something I admire about the film. It's like the central character of Ed Harris. He's doing this bad thing for a noble kind of intention. It's just that he went into the pure psychopath wing of the military and got every single psychopath he could find to make this happen. Because like, it's like, we're going to go and, you know, take a lot of people hostage, and we're going to maybe threaten to kind of kill a lot of people in San Francisco. Oh yeah, but guys, we're also going to be doing it so a lot of people can get money for you know, the fact that their actions are disavowed by the US government. It's like, no, yeah, you had us at, you know, killing a lot of people in San Francisco. But anyway, that's what I remember the most about this at school. But I don't know, did you rewatch this for this podcast, or are you going based on memory for this?
No. I watched it during the week there, and a bit like yourself, you know, growing up, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was the best thing since, you know, sliced bread, and it's because of the reasons sort of Darren listed there. You know, the set pieces are just, you know, were just spectacular to me, and I just thought, wow, what is this thing? You know, it's just it's non-stop, and it's just perfect Friday night entertainment. But upon rewatching it, you do see the cracks in it, and you know, the shortcomings of it. But overall, I still really enjoyed it, and I still feel it's, you know, perfect Friday night entertainment. And it was a bit refreshing because I know you mentioned 6 Underground, like the chase sequence in this here in San Francisco, it just seems like a normal car chase compared to the one at the beginning of 6 Underground, which is just...
Yeah, hang on. Yeah. I'm glad you clarified that. Like, it looks normal in Michael Bay's vision of the world.
Yeah.
Like it's not like Bullet.
Yeah, you know what? The
It's
thing is, right? The chase in The Rock is like Bullet on cocaine, right? And then it's like the 1 in 6 Underground is the chase in Bullet on bath salts. You know, and I think that's just the only way you can describe it, because he just seems to have really regressed into his own idea of what a action set piece should be, and it's just so brain numbing and mean spirited now compared to what it was before. That it's watching The Rock again. I was like, this is really refreshing. It's nice to see Michael Bay like this here, and I think it's partially maybe because he had someone like Jerry Bruckheimer going, Michael, slow down a bit there. You're going a bit too far with all this stuff. And he's like, okay.
Well, apparently, I read an interview online for this where he could have said, and it's coming back to what Darren said about Sean Connery getting lines rewritten, Nick Cage ad-libbing a lot of his stuff, that it was going to be a lot more serious and a lot darker when this kind of started out, and you get a sense of that, that mean-spiritedness that is prevalent in so much of Michael Bay's work. I think of like Bad Boys 2 is pretty mean-spirited.
Pain and Gain.
Oh. And as the Transformers franchise went on, again, I'm kind of going back to that thing I said at the start, you look at where Michael Bay is now, compared to like this it's over the top and silly, but it still feels so restrained. But you still see so much of his stuff. Like, I mean, he loves a good helicopter. He loves a helicopter in shot. He loves all that. He loves kind of the panning kind of camera, that get out of the car shot. And it's in every Michael Bay film. It's in Bad Boys. It's in this. It's in the Transformers. The get out of the car, the panning of the camera 360, and yeah, I mean, I do love that car chase, probably now for all the wrong reasons. Like, dude, you really fucked up your Ferrari. It's not mine. And he just then beats the guy and takes his bike,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the thing that makes me love this the most, as much as like Joe, you adore Nick Cage when he's going full Nick Cage. I don't know where you're going to say this is on the Nick Cage spectrum of things. Looking at now, I mean, I probably never was that aware when I was younger watching this of all the kind of Nick Cage-isms and all this kind of stuff, and just how over the top he was. I probably thought he was completely normal-ish. But the thing I love about this is Sean Connery. Sean Connery, for me, is what really makes the film work. He's the film's exec producer, one of the exec producers. He's come on this, and you just see he's just having an absolute ball. And the stuff I remembered from The Rock before we talked about it, if you ask me what are the things I remember about The Rock, it's the scene early on in the hotel with getting his hair cut. I always remember that for some reason. And of course I remember the line, because I said this to my wife the other night whenever we watched this, and I shouldn't be ashamed to say this, but yeah, I probably should be ashamed. I'll be honest. When I was a team leader at home base, and I would have said like, right, okay, guys, we need to get our sales figures. We need to get our sales targets. We need to get this. We need to get that. And they've been, oh, you know what? We'll try. And it's like, no, winners don't try. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen. And I probably used that in my days as a team leader at home base. Sorry, anybody who worked with me, but that stuck with me. It's weird little moments which you don't really see that much of in Michael Bay's films, are what really make this work. Little scenes, the action is all over the top and stupendous as Michael Bay does, but it's little smaller stuff. Like it's even just kind of Sean Connery talking about being imprisoned and this, that, and other. But I don't know. I don't know where do you rate this? For you guys, Darren, having just watched this, where do you rate this as a Sean Connery performance?
I think it was a brilliant performance, and I'm going to open up a can of worms here after when I finish my point. But you touched upon him really sort of joining the film, and for me, like the perfect hero was one that he doesn't want to be a hero. He's in that position where he's not doing it because he has to do it. Like say Nick Cage's character, he's doing that because that's his job, and it doesn't really feel genuine. And that's where his sort of drama comes from, where Sean Connery's been forced to do it. He doesn't want to do it. There's plenty of opportunities he could walk away. He knows that place inside out, but he's sort of being like, right, okay, then I'll do it. And I think that's great. And he really holds that sort of tension throughout. And my can of worms opening up is that whenever I sort of compare and I've done this before in the show a few times, I compare any single hero to John McClane from Die Hard 1, right?
Yeah.
Regardless, and Nick, you're already nodding. You're like, oh, here he goes again. But I mean, I try to think.
Can I just stop you, Darren, very quickly? I really thought you were going to say I compare any film. You always bring wrestling into it. I thought that's where you were going to go.
Well, I could.
No, we'll not go down
bring the Rock into the Rock.
No, because I have emailed Vince McMahon to hire John McClane all these years. He won't do it. Man wrestles in bare feet. But yeah, there's that tension too. Like, he is vulnerable. They do kind of, Michael Bay kind of throws in a wee bit of vulnerability in like one sentence where the two guys realize that they both have like a daughter and a wife, or a daughter and a pregnant girlfriend at home. And that's all it's said. It's like, right, might as well do this then. Might as well stop these bloody terrorists for what they're doing. So there's that. But yeah, I like that. The one thing in the film which I think that they could have touched on was there wasn't enough scandal going on outside of like the army and what's going on the island. If the media had got word of this, I think they could have had a different layer and put a lot of pressure on them to actually do the job.
Joe, I think Darren's trying to turn The Rock into the political thriller that he wanted.
Yeah,
it to be.
That's it.
Listen, Michael Bay made this, Darren, not Rob Reiner. Just let it go.
But I'm just thinking, a couple of days previous, the city of San Francisco was destroyed in a car crash, a car chase. And they're like, no, don't worry about it. We've bigger fish to fry here. We've 15 missiles on Alcatraz, right? And then with 81, or what's that line? There's 81 hostages, but there could be 80 if they don't abide by the rules.
Hey,
so.
Darren, just to quote something that is thankfully from January, a thing of the past. It's false news. It's fake news. Fake news. Fake news. Fake news. No, it didn't happen, Darren. It would all been a cover up. There had just been a crew kind of back there saying, "Oh, there was just an explosion at Alcatraz."
Training exercise.
Yeah, it just went wrong. There was a gas main or something exploded. That's what it is. And the planes were just there for a flyover. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, but you could also then sit and go. If you're going by that logic, you could also kind of say like, there's not a lot for women in this film. There really isn't. I mean, literally, there's the daughter whose only job is to be the daughter, and there's his girlfriend who I quite like the fact that she calls Nick Cage's character the whole way. Anytime she's kind of talking about him, she's like, "Oh, my fiance," and anytime he's on the rock, he's like, "Oh, my girlfriend. She's my girlfriend," and her literal job is to be. Apologies for any female or any male viewers that might be offended by this. Literally flatfoot and pregnant. That's it. That is her whole job. She's literally like, she walks in, her character development in the film is Nick Cage she walks in, Nick Cage is playing his guitar and he's just saved, San Francisco. He's already saved San Francisco before he saved San Francisco and Alcatraz. And he's like, yeah, it'd be really shitty to bring a child into the world. And she's like, I'm pregnant. You're kidding me. And she's like, that is her. And she's like, I'm pregnant, I'm Catholic, I'm pregnant, and I'm not married. That is what defines that character. There's not a lot there, but I think the film gets away from it because it is in such a male-dominated environment. In other Michael Bay films, like the Transformers series, Bad Boys, or Six Underground, you can't really get that away from that because there's female characters there and there is those same issues. But I don't know. That's just me going off on a tangent. It's just the thing. You wanted it to be a tense political thriller about a cover up by the government. I wanted more for the female cast and more for female portrayal on camera. Joe, let's get back to the original point. Where do you rate this in the grand spectrum of Sean Connery performances?
It's definitely, well, outside of Bond, even it's definitely up there with some of the best. Like, you can tell that he's really relishing playing the role. Like he's not even exactly, he's like an exaggerated form of James Bond in a way. But yeah, he's loving the role, and you can almost knows through his natural charisma that the audience is enjoying watching him, because he's just doing his thing and he's not being held back. But funny you mentioned about the script itself, and then when it was in development, Sean Connery wasn't the original choice for us, because when I was reading up on it, you know who the first choice was, but turned it down? Arnold Schwarzenegger. The only reason he turned it down is because he got like an 80-page draft with loads of like notes scribbled on it and that there, and he's like, oh, I can't be in this here. But then he said it's one of his biggest regrets not signing on to it. Can you imagine The Rock with Arnold Schwarzenegger instead?
I'm trying to think, like around 90s, what Arnie would have been doing instead.
You know what? He did a Razor instead, because I looked up the time frame. So yeah, a big oof.
Oof.
CGI crocodiles over Michael Bay madness.
Oh, Arnold. Because I was kind of thinking, because this was released a year after Bond came back. So Gold, I think, was out in 95. Connery has a habit of this. He was not. He left the Bond franchise not on the best terms with the Broccoli's. I think, was it the 80th anniversary plans he scuppered at the Oscars because he wouldn't attend. They had everybody else lined up. They'd even got Lazenby. Lazenby was going to agree.
Lazenby.
They were going to be like, "Who's that guy? Oh, he did Bond once. Oh, when?" But I think it was Connery. Basically, was like, "No, I'm not." Now I don't know, because it's come out, after the news of his death, that he had been suffering from dementia. I don't know whether that was a contributing factor or not, but I remember vividly around the time of the 80th anniversary, there was this big plan at the Academy Award, because they do that. I mean, they do. I remember, was it Lady Gaga a few years ago? They did it for The Sound of Music, which was pretty great, and she did a couple of songs from that. And there's been others I know, but he was, because his refusal to kind of come back and probably just be on stage with his fellow Bond cast members, scuppered that. He didn't leave the franchise in the best. I think, was it when Roger Moore took over tenure, he kind of brought out the Never Say Never Again, isn't that the unofficial Bond?
That came out the same time as Octopussy.
All right, so okay, so I thought it might have been Bond's. I thought it might have been Roger Moore's first outing as 007.
No.
He you just got to wonder. Part of that is like, kind of like, I'll play a former, and I basically imagine Bond got caught and was in prison for a long, long time. That's the role he's playing here. He's not a villain of sorts. Can I also ask, just on this note, just when we're talking, before getting away from Sean Connery, I have this problem, because one of the things I forgot about the cast of The Rock. It's an impressive cast. We've mentioned Tony Todd, but how many of you kind of could get through a scene with is it John C. McGinley, Dr. Cox, without kind of wanting to do a wolf whistle or something? It's like or something. It's just weird.
Just the hand in the head like that. I guess it's constantly stressed out at Nicolas Cage. It's constantly doing that. But yeah, I thought that was a bit weird with Sean Connery and him having that battle scene, and I was like, this is great. But now you said Arnie would be involved. Arnie would have torn him in pieces. Like there would have been no contest.
Oh, I know.
But yeah,
since you've clearly done more research than me, Joe, I don't know about Darren. Was Nick Cage always the first choice?
He was, and it was because of Nick Cage that Sean Connery wanted to do the film. He was the one that actually got him on board, because I think he just won the Oscar at the time for Leaving Las Vegas, and this was his first like big post-Oscar film. So he's like, "Oh, there's a talented young actor I want to work with. He's sensational."
You got that impression back there at the end.
Yeah, it was great at the end.
I don't know where you went in the kind of the middle part there.
I know you need the S's in there.
Yeah, you kind of went a wee bit like, "Hi, I'm phoning tech support for something," and that's the voice.
What do you want now?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I don't think it's quintessential Sean Connery, but it is kind of about the time he never really went away. He was doing like 89, 87 was The Untouchables. You know, so late 80s, he was still kind of going. Early 90s, there was a few, you know, when was Indiana
Last Crusade.
Yeah, and you've got Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You've got a few others, I'm sure. I think Medicine Man, which is a film my mum loves. I've never got round to see it. Just the poster puts me off. It's just like, no. But you've got this, and then you have Entrapment, which is another Sean Connery film I absolutely love. Probably not for Sean Connery. I was a teenage boy back then. Don't judge me. That scene with Catherine Zeta-Jones, it was like, I have become a man.
Oh, laser beams.
No, not even the laser beam, just a bit with all the ropes. Oh, Joe, that film's it's like Basic Instinct and like Entrapment or
and Life Force.
and Life Force, yeah. But that's for different reasons. That's sex vampires.
Have to bring it in.
Yeah, but you know, it is looking back, it is a really impressive cast for this. You know, even in this, and I have to say, like Michael Bay is good at this. Well, it might be Bruckheimer, or suppose in the Transformers stuff, it might be Spielberg and his clout. He does have a habit of getting good actors in really small, probably thankless roles, and given the film and those particular moments and those roles a bit of clout. Like I'm thinking, is it Transformers 3 has John Malkovich, or 4?
Yes.
John Malkovich kind of. I think John Malkovich is in more than one. Yeah. I'm nearly certain. I think, and Stanley Tucci. You've got kind of there. You've got. Is
Francis McDormand as well?
Yes, that is true. Is it William Forsythe is in this?
Yeah, he's like the cop that's on like Goodspeed's side and Mason's side in terms of things. Yeah. And
you've got, like, as we mentioned, keep coming back, you've got Candyman. Candyman's there. You've got Dr. Cox. I don't think Scrubs was a thing in 96. I don't think it would have been a thing at all. But there's a lot of, like, really good, you know, as I would probably say, character actors that are there that give the film a little bit of clout that I think it needs to get over the... And I'd actually forgot that Michael Biehn was in this. Yeah. When I rewatched it, I was like, oh, there he is. You know, so much for him being a bitty kind of washed up, kind of bit of an angry, could have been guy I met at the Comic-Con not once but twice here in Belfast. You know, there he is. And apparently he found himself being quite intimidated acting alongside Sean Connery. And I think they got proper seals in, I think, for some of the scenes. Like that scene when they come, like the whole breaking into Alcatraz. We haven't really done this podcast. It's been a while. I've been too busy kind of talking to people about one specific film, or with the Dark Edges. Darren's been talking to paranormal investigators. Joe's been talking about books that terrified him, and the real life people that inspired or were inspired by the Scream movies. We haven't done a kind of, let's have a look at this blow by blow review of a film, but I do love the whole breaking into Alcatraz after we've got through the most over-the-top car chase through the streets of San Francisco, and that one black guy who just loves his little street car, and he's really angry and really upset when it's just the most over-the-top explosion ever. But once they get into Alcatraz, I love all that. I suppose it does kind of, in a way, it arcs back to what's the Clint Eastwood film? Escape from Alcatraz.
Birdman of Alcatraz.
Yeah. You think of that, and you kind of, I love even the sequence just where he's timing in between the flames, open the doors, and the catchphrase that so good that they had to use it twice in the film. Welcome to the Rock, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. And that sequence, that is particularly. Well, I suppose you can't really say it when you've had that car chase sequence, but once you get to Alcatraz, you see how the film's designed: set piece, a little bit of character development, a little bit of story, set piece. I'd forgot about the whole stuff in the mine shaft when I rewatched it. I'd completely forgotten about that and how kind of over the top that is. But the sequence where they're first there's a confrontation between the goodies and the baddies, as my mum would say, is great. I loved it. It's like, Sergeant, or is it Sergeant or Corporal? I don't know, whatever one it is, whatever Michael Biehn's rank is, and Ed Harris's character. I have the high ground. You have no chance. Stand down. It's
the shower room sort of thing.
Yeah. It's great.
Oh, it's fantastic, and that's just, it's very Michael Bay at the same time. You know, it's just like the Ed Harris, Michael Bean just shouting at each other constantly. It's just quick cut, quick cut, quick cut, and then I think like somebody knocks something over, and then the gunfire begins. And
Yeah, I think they knock a brick over or something like that.
Then the big swelling Hans Zimmer score plays, and there's the blaze of glory that all the Navy SEALs go down in, and that there. It's just, it's fantastic. There's no other way.
It's military porn. There's no like. Do you know what I don't have my notes up beside me here, but when I was rewatching it, there's the opening sequence we haven't even really talked about where they steal. Well, there's the opening sequence where we see Ed Harris. He's going to visit his late wife's grave, and he's like, "I'm going to do something that I couldn't have done when you were alive." I think what's the reward? Medal of Valor, or what's the reward, or what's the medal?
Purple Heart or something?
Purple Heart. He puts in the grave, and then you go see them stealing this chemical threat, this stuff. That's great, but when you watch it, you go, why has no one come to Michael Bay and said, just make a Call of Duty film? Just when you watch it, it's just go, this is just Call of Duty porn. That's all that it is. And you see, like, particularly in those stuff, like, he does love a bit of military porn. In all his films, we see that. As I say, he has to get the kind of the helicopter and the blades and all and the stuff. Is there an American flag flying solemnly?
There is. There's a bit where they're running before they get into the planes. There's like a slow-mo shot, and there's the American flag as they're getting in before the sort of last act of Alcatraz. But it's funny you said that about Call of Duty, because I don't know if you played the new Warzone game, or it was out last year, the Battle Royale sort of idea. But whenever you get killed, and say you're playing the game, you get killed and you get sent to this thing called the Gulag, and you get like an opportunity to get put back into the game, but you have to do like a one-on-one with another guy who's just died, and you actually get put into like this. It's like a stadium where there's all the other players watching you around the edge, and it's actually that sort of bathroom scene from The Rock. I'm pretty sure it is. I'll need to look it up. So all the players look down on you, and there's just rows of like walls and showers, and you have one gun, and whoever gets it. I'm pretty sure that was inspired by The Rock. So I could see maybe there is a collaboration there. But, yeah.
When you mentioned the Gulags, I instantly thought of is it the Muppets Most Wanted and Tina Fey's song of Back in the Gulags. I thought maybe one of us might go into rendition. You're both looking at me kind of going like, whoosh. So just move on, Jim. Just because you like the Muppets doesn't mean anybody else does. But
I do like the Muppets. I just haven't seen that one.
It's got Ricky Gervais. It's got an evil Kermit. What's not to like? I would happily have it if they remade The Rock, but with Muppets.
I think every film be improved with Muppets when you think about it.
Well, Ricky Gervais has done this, but he's kind of. I think his go-to one was at Schindler's List, remade with the Muppets. That would be tough. I have to say, it would be a tough watch.
Who would play a Ralph Fiennes character? That's what I want to know. Like, is it going to be Fozzie Bear with this, like the rifle behind him going out there? That's just awful. Oh, jeez. No, not going any further.
It's Remembrance Sunday, guys, who are time of recording this, you know.
I know.
That's true. Blame Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
But no, but in all honesty, would you watch Schindler's List with Muppets?
I find it very hard to watch it anyway now. Like, I've seen it a few times, but it's one of those films, like, it's a fantastic film, but I never want to watch it again.
Yeah. You've experienced it. I remember once many years ago, she wouldn't have been my fiance back then. She would have just been my girlfriend. And my lovely now wife, Amber, turned to me in the car. We were driving. I think I was dropping her to work. And she said, do you know what I'm really in the mood to watch tonight? Schindler's List. And I kind of turned to her at that point and said, like, at 8:30 in the morning, whatever it was. Like, I said, I don't think any person ever in the history of mankind has ever said, mankind, womankind, whatever. I don't want to be kind of offensive. But I don't think anyone has ever said that in the history of humanity. Said, I'm really in the mood to watch Schindler's List tonight. It's a bit like, I was going to say the name of the film, but I can't remember. It was the one a couple of years ago that won the Oscar that was set in the Nazi camp. Is it
not The Pianist, is it?
No. I can't remember the name.
Oh, Son of Saul.
Son of Saul, because I was going to say you could make the Son of Saul with the Muppets, but that would be a really tough watch.
Imagine Showgirls with puppets or Muppets.
I'm there, Mrs.
The
Piggy.
Swimming pool.
Yeah.
Right, what I'm picturing, right, is...
oh, God, I don't want to know.
What I'm picturing...
Right, hands, all you'd see is just the hands. You wouldn't see the Muppets.
Miss...
Kermie!
you No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be Kermit. Kermit wouldn't be the head of the sleazy place in Las Vegas. It would be. I can't remember the name, but you know, like the news reporter Muppet. You know, the blue one that's quite long and slender. It would be someone like him.
I was thinking Gonzo.
No,
even.
no, actually, Joe, it would be. You know, the owl. You know, the one. It's like the eagle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the eagle and Miss Piggy. That's what it would be.
Oh, feathers flying everywhere, water, beautiful.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. But anyway, back to the Rock. Back to the Rock. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking last night just because you mentioned this earlier on, Darren. You know, the Die Hard stuff, and there is a lot of films that try to channel Die Hard. You know, I was thinking, you know, stuff like Olympus Has Fallen would be one recently, or there was that one with Guy. I love that. I can't remember the name of it. The one, is it Escape Plan? Guy Pearce? No, that's that was Sylvester Stallone and Arnie. There's one with Guy Pearce in space, which
Lockdown.
I fucking love that film, and that does really channel Die Hard. But there's no denying. I mean, Die Hard is in this film's DNA. You can see it. You know, it's kind of like that sense of, you know, these two guys. They might not be there by accident, but they've got to do the job. Nick Cage is not your everyday hero. Sean Connery does not want to be there, but as Darren said, you know, they've got girlfriends and they've got a daughter. You know, they've got a girlfriend and a daughter. Why not? You know, as long as they got to go to the gift shop on the way out, that's all I can say at Alcatraz. Have any of you been to Alcatraz? It's somewhere I was saying. Anytime any film like that where it's site specific or somewhere you go, I'd love to go there. I'd love to go to Alcatraz. I'd love to visit it because I think they shot it at Alcatraz, and they couldn't close it down, so they were working round. You know, guests. That would be amazing. I just imagine just going out for a wee day at Alcatraz and just there's Sean Connery, there's Nick Cage.
But you know the thing about that as well, Connery refused to, you know, be going back and forth on a commute. So he had a hut built on the island to live. So you can imagine going in that tour and seeing him like coming out of the shower suddenly out there, morning.
I'm picturing kind of a hut like Luke lived in the newer Star Wars films. I'm kind of picturing something like that, and just kind of going down and bathing, going for a swim in San Francisco Bay, and just coming out, just looking like a god, a man god, and then just getting into work. I don't know,
just milking the cows and drinking it in front of everyone. It's a bit like Luke.
Yeah, that's what I'd imagine. I would have happily got my money's worth that day. Anything else kind of specifically you want to mention about The Rock? You know, we've kind of talked about Nick Cage a bit. We've talked, of course, about Sean Connery in the film. Ed Harris, we haven't really talked. I kind of alluded to earlier on. He's the type of villain in a film I love, where he's not out to kind of bring about, you know, absolute chaos. Well, he is in a way, but he's not there kind of for this kind of taking over the world kind of plan. He's not kind of there to do this. He's doing something he thinks in his mind. He knows it's a bad thing. He knows it's a terrible thing, but he feels the injustice of his fellow comrades, his fallen soldiers who have been completely left behind. Their families haven't been given compensation because they've been operating in secret for the US government. So he's doing this to get those families that money, plus a lot of extra money that he's going to, you know, decide what to do with himself, maybe buy himself an iPad. I don't know what he's up to, but I remember going back to the days of like the school ground. That was the thing we talked about back at the day. Like, that's what we liked about him, that he was a complex. Do you consider, I suppose it's a silly question, do you consider him a villain?
I know you go, Darren.
I do and I don't. Like I see at the start of the opening scene where he's sort of talking to his wife's grave and he's outlining, you know, we will have our, you know, reparation or something like that, he says. And then you realize, right, maybe he has a strong reason for doing this. Like, he feels it's such an injustice, and then starts demanding money, and then he starts sort of losing the sort of team spirit. Those guys start turning against him. he's basically like a shit Hans Gruber. I'm going back to Die Hard again, Jim. He hasn't got control of his ranks, and you sort of do feel a bit like I felt a bit sorry for him near the end. I was just like, well, he has a mission, but it's not being executed as well as he wanted to go. So I don't see him as an out and out villain, but there was a strong motive for him doing that. And I think that's, that should be right for every villain. They need to believe in what they're doing. It's not world domination for the sake of it. It's not murder for the sake of it. There is a reason for him doing this action, and he has it all planned out with Alcatraz. And I would have liked to see, what would have happened if he had have just lasted to the end of the movie. So there was that epic showdown or something like that. So, spoiler alert, we don't really get to see. But what do you guys think?
I kind of likened him in a way to a football manager under pressure. Like he's got his goals and his objectives for the season, but his players aren't exactly seeing eye to eye with him. And then slowly but surely he loses the dressing room.
Joe, who's
the tournament?
Joe, who's a star player?
Who's a star player? Well, I don't know. I'd say Tony Todd was it. He would have been that big battling defender for him.
Who's the team's water carrier?
Is the water carrier? It's probably John C. McGinley. And then he went down the blaze of glory, as we all know. I think the descent came from your fella with the weird haircut. Yeah, I don't know the actor's name. But David Morse was his captain, and his captain let him down at the end. He didn't stick up for him enough, and it eventually just cost him his job and ultimately his life.
That's why I'm saying, like, David Morse is more of a villain in the end, and it's the thing I alluded to earlier on. Like, when they picked this team, they clearly just went to the psychopath division. It's like, yeah, we want to do this. We've got all these noble intentions. Like, no, not interested, mate. No, it's not for me. Oh yeah, we're gonna take a lot of people hostage in Alcatraz, and we're gonna threaten to blow up and kill a lot of people in San Francisco. Count me in, because they are lunatics, as Nick Cage alludes to with the "I'm going to take pleasure in gutting you, boy." I'm going. That is, do you know what? As soon I was talking earlier about lines I remember from films like "fuck the prom," "winners go home and fuck the prom queen," all that kind of stuff. And there's a couple of stuff I'm gonna say I can't remember, but the stuff about where he's talking about, you're Greek, isn't that it? You're Greek, when he's kind of talking about Sir Walter Raleigh and all that kind of stuff about how they were falsely in prison. I always remember that stuff. And then as soon as it almost came to that scene in the film, when the Marine or whatever it is, the henchman says that, is like, oh, I know exactly what's coming next. It's Nick Cage lying kind of almost Christ-like on the ground, and he's like, "I'm going to take pleasure in gutting you, boy." I'm going to take pleasure. It's just the way he says it, like two times. It's a line that has stuck with him. But yeah, he clearly went to the psychopath division to get their men.
I just wonder how often, how many takes do they get for those lines? Because it happened a few times in the film. There'd be an unnecessarily sort of deeply spoken sentence, like at the end when Nick Cage is saying, or he's saying like this, Sean Connery, "Where are you going to go?" And he goes, "I'm going to go to Maui. I'm thinking Maui." And then Sean Connery goes, "Forget about Maui," or something. And you're like, what's the reference here? This is a real slowly spoken sentence. Or even the rocket scene when, the Candyman is...
I just wonder if maybe Sean Connery had a really bad trip at Maui. Yeah. That was where that came from. It's like, Maui shit. But can I also say another thing, right? And this is just me, and I know this film was released after The Rock, but Austin Powers has ruined films like The Rock for me, because see, anytime anyone gets a nasty, horrible death, like there's the guy that impaled on a pipe, you said. I was just started thinking about it last night. I started thinking, it's like, oh, that phone call. That's one of my favorite bits in Austin Powers. Like, run over by a steamroller, you said. Oh, it's like, he'll not be coming out for your birthday. And I was just thinking about that Austin Powers has ruined The Rock for me. Just the amount of shot in the foot, you said. had a television dropped in his head, you said. Oh, he'll not be coming to the christening, and I think it's Tony Todd. I think is impaled on a couple of them are impaled on pipes, but it's just like impaled on a pipe. He's like, I don't know. It's just
yeah, John C. McGinley setting fire by an old ex-con, and he fell down a mine shaft.
Yeah,
when you do break it down like that, it is very Roadrunner-esque. You know,
they were having a Scooby-Doo Minecraft chase. You know,
did you not know that Sean Connery's line "meep meep" was cut out of that?
Meep meep.
Meep meep, Miss Money Penny. But no, watching films, like all those type of films, I've recently found. I think it's because I'd rewatched Austin Powers over lockdown and just completely had forgotten just how much I adored that film and how much I annoyed my wife that night by quoting it quite a lot. And just rewatching it, I was just like, as soon as I started watching The Rock, it's like I turned around to Amber, it's like impaled on a pipe, you say? It's like, no, but anyway, that is just the way my mind works, people. Another thing I always remember about this film, I love it, is the ending. The kind of like, as we kind of say, we mentioned this earlier on with Tony Todd, the you're the Rocket Man and all that stuff, and then they're about to drop. What is it they're dropping on? It's
napalm.
Is it napalm or is it not something? I thought
no,
it was.
They said something like it's napalm because it'll instantly incinerate whatever chemical agent they have on the island.
I thought maybe misremembered it because I thought it was they couldn't. I thought napalm was what they could use, but it was something else they had to get that was hot enough to strap on. They couldn't get it.
Oh no, you're right. Thermite. Sorry, you're right. It is.
And
thermite.
When all that stuff happens, and this is the key point, right, Darren? Were you getting a bit emotional at the very end, and when Nick, he finally, that's his character development in this film. He finally earns enough courage to put that big needle through his heart, and he kind of gets the courage to get up with the green flags and get it done. Did you get upset when you thought Nick Cage was dead?
I felt more for his girlfriend / fiance that he talked about. She spent the whole film, asking questions and, they learned of that. And it was a very triumphant moment at the end, that sort of knee slide. It was sort of like the Breakfast Club, sticking your hand in the air, at the end of the movie after you've got the prom queen pretty much. But yeah, I was emotional, but I was just really sad that not only was that the movie over, it was the end of that sort of blossoming friendship between him and Sean Connery. I say friendship, it was a bit tense at times, but I kind of wanted that to develop a bit more, and maybe to have like a thing where they both help each other out at the end, like they're forced to do. But yeah,
hang on, Darren, you saying you wanted Sean Connery's character to be best man at his wedding?
Yes, I had a feeling that Sean Connery would turn out to be his dad or something like that. I just had a real feeling there was going to be some sort of untold story, but or with the ending as well, I was thinking, now he's got this sort of MacGuffin thing that was conveniently dropped into like the last bit of the film to explain Sean Connery being put in prison. I thought that was going to be like the start of the National Treasure films. It was like, this is a good lead-in for Nicolas Cage to go on and become the guy from National Treasure. Well,
yeah. Funny you say that, Darren, because that was the talk of a sequel. They wanted to do a sequel where, Nick Cage's character's on the run from the law because he has this microphone. Mm-hmm. So he goes to seek out Mason to help him get away.
He's on the run from Womack. You son of a bitch.
You said he was vaporized.
I want to. Yeah, Womack's a bit of a kind of. He's a weirdo. It's like, I want to see the body. I need to see the body. It's like completely vaporized. And then William Forsythe's character's like, yeah. And do you know what? Right at that one scene, you're like, there's no way I would believe Nick Cage at all when he says with the biggest grin on his face ever, like, yeah, he's completely vaporized. Yeah.
Just as he turns and walks away, I can't believe he bought that.
Can that happen? Yes, it can. It absolutely can happen.
Yeah. I'm a biochemist. Of course I know these things.
You see, that works in the 90s, but see if he was now, he'd be like getting his phone out going, can a body be vaporized? You lied.
I don't know anything really about the military, but I noticed this in the film. All sort of military films of the 90s have this, where it's someone in a control room typing, but the screen is that bright that the text on the screen appears on their face. Is that a thing? Is it because it's a sub? I thought it only happened in a submarine, but I didn't think these guys were on a submarine. They were in that control tower.
I think probably Michael Bay just seen that in a film and was like, I want that shot.
Yeah, he watched The Hunt for Red October and was like, oh, Sean Connery, and it looked cool in that. It looked cool in this.
Why not, Darren? Well, if he wants to do it, he can. When I was watching it tonight, I was like, well, this does set a lot of seeds for a sequel, and I was unsurprised that there was talk of a sequel. I think Michael Bay, I think in 2017, I think I read on IMDb, was kind of, he had pitched an idea for a sequel, but it just never went anywhere, or maybe Sean Connery didn't want to come back. I don't know. Did either of you do any more research into this as to kind of why it never really materialized?
No, because it was a hit. Like, it made a load of money, and I don't know. I think by that stage, it, as good as it was, I don't think anyone really wanted to come back to it, because like that story that I mentioned about the potential sequel, that's how you would start a film, but where do you go and where does it finish?
Back to Alcatraz.
But Alcatraz doesn't, well, a large chunk of it doesn't exist anymore because of what happens at the end of the film. But that's the thing, like, even if he's going on the run, but to what end? Where does this thing end? There's no real story you can go with it. So then that's why he's like, I'll frig it, I'll just make Armageddon. Yeah,
because you just go, you made a sequel to Bad Boys with Bad Boys 2, which is just an hour too long. That was another thing, looking at this, I don't remember it being as long. I don't think Michael Bay, I think bar one feature, I think Michael Bay has only ever made one film under 2 hours. I'd love someone to say Michael Bay, like we've said with other things, just to do a 90-minute screenplay, just do a 90-minute feature, just cut it all down and get it into 90 minutes. I would say it would be a lot tighter. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy The Rock. Okay, I would enjoy it much more if it was with Muppets. I'm not going to lie. But I think if it was 90 minutes, I think it would just be a hell of a lot tighter. But then that's just me kind of into whataboutery and what ifs. Anything else, guys?
I would like to mention, sorry, Jim, just to talk about Michael Bay's choice. Like you said, you mentioned Armageddon next. Like, I did see a story recently that Ben Affleck was criticizing, it's on DVD commentary or something like that, that he said to Michael Bay, why in Armageddon are we going out of our way to hire a dig team to go to the moon or to go to the asteroid? Why don't we just train the astronauts to do this? And then when watching The Rock, I was like, why if they hired this man, the only man that could break out of Alcatraz to help? And then I was like, right, it's obviously because he's going to know the prison and he's, got to paint that. But then you find out the reason why he's in jail, and then you think, why on earth did they let him in? Why did they get him involved? That's the most risky thing they could do just for the sake of San Francisco. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
It's all right. We've got Womack to blame for all this. Womack just kind of wouldn't let any details be. Nobody knew about. He was he was pretty much just, I think, as he says himself, Nelson Mandela in prison for 3 decades.
Yes, they are the exact same.
Yeah,
John Mason and Nelson Mandela are one.
They are exactly the same. And I did chuckle at the "What will I do? Run for president?" And just now in 2020's eye, well,
why not?
You couldn't have done a worse job than the last guy.
Yeah.
Joe, anything else? Kind of before we kind of move on to and wrap up the podcast, anything else you want to say? I'd actually forgot, you mentioned earlier, I'd forgotten Hans Zimmer did the score for this, but when you listen to it, it is quintessential Hans Zimmer. It's very Hans Zimmer-esque. I think it's not just Hans Zimmer. I think he's working with somebody else.
Yeah, I can't remember the other guy's name, but it's in that, there's one scene that stuck out to me. I was like, hang on a second. It was the scene in the mine shaft. I honestly heard the theme to Pirates of the Caribbean, and I was going, what the hell's going on here? Like, but then when you realize he didn't even do the score to the first Pirates of the Caribbean, I think it was one of his students or something that did it. And then he took all the credit for the sequence and got all the money for it.
That's the Hans Zimmer's way.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, the score, yeah, it works really well, and then he gets the big overblown military porn aspect of Michael by having this huge swelling patriotic music anytime there's the Navy SEALs going on their mission, or there's an American flag, or even at the very start where Ed Harris is at his wife's grave, there's a bunch of Marines passing Ed Harris, and then there's the slow motion salute to them and all that there. But it works for the film. If you tried to, like I said earlier, if this was Rob Reiner's The Rock, you wouldn't have Hans Zimmer scoring it.
With Billy Crystal playing the role of
Good
Sean.
speed. No, he'd have to be good speed. Let me think. If we're thinking the Rob Reiner universe, you'd probably get James Caan then to do Sean Connery's role, since he was in Israel.
Carrie Always would be in there.
Kathy Bates would be Ed Harris's character. That'd be fantastic.
Kathy Bates would be the love interest.
She'd be the Rocket Woman. She'd be Tony Todd.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else. Robert, can't think.
Meg Ryan. I'm just thinking.
She'd be the fiance at home.
Oh yeah, Carrie Fisher would be. Oh, she'd be Womack, or William Forsythe's character. She'd be William Forsythe's character.
Andre the Giant would be in there somewhere as well. He'd be one of the bad guys.
Oh, he'd be the henchman. Yeah, he'd be the one that gets in a fist fight with Sean Connery. Remember, he says, "Oh, you're British or something out there to advertise my old man's Irish or something out." When it make no sense having this giant French man doing that.
My old man's Irish.
An awful Andre the Giant impression. Oh well.
R.I.P. Andre the Giant.
Oh no.
Another one he was gone far too soon. Do you know what? I don't know what. I think it's because one of you mentioned about being a father or someone mentioned there. Do you know what scene? I was talking about this earlier on about little moments in The Rock, and it's little moments that, okay, Armageddon is kind of the same kind of film where it's got all the big over the top action, and then there's like the bit that everybody, every teenage girl loved whenever Ben Affleck played with the little kind of, is it shortbread or the animal crackers?
Oh, animal crackers, yeah.
And everyone was like, "Oh, why can't you do that?" It's like, no, because I just eat.
Because I want to eat them.
I would never get animal crackers. That is not an appropriate snack. And B, I would have ate them. But he has kind of lost that over the years, and he's just not interested in it. But the stuff I love in this film, there's that scene where he meets his daughter for the first time. And it's just a throwaway line, but it's the way Sean Connery delivers it. It just proves that even in something as silly and overblown as this, he is an absolutely stupendous actor. I just love that. It's like he's talking to his daughter. It's like, you're the only proof that I exist. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just because of kind of lockdown 2.0. Maybe I've just got more sentimental in my old age. But I got me right in the feels. Maybe it's because I was thinking about with him passing away, and maybe it's just my current state. I have found myself getting over emotional a lot of things I never got over emotional for before in the past. Maybe lockdown and the kind of pandemic has had that effect on me. But yeah, that got me right in the feels. Yeah, that's all I can say. I don't know. That's just literally kind of my last 2 cents. I will bring this part of the podcast to an end just by saying I think generally, even though it is a film from '96, I think it's well worth a watch. And I'm surprised. Like, I was genuinely surprised you hadn't seen it, Darren, but I've been talking to a few other people. A lot of people I know haven't watched The Rock. Literally, and I thought it was just one of those films that just, fuck. My mum's seen The Rock. Now, granted, every time she watches it, it's like, just going back when Darren mentioned Die Hard, like every time my mother watches Die Hard, she's like, "Oh, I've seen it 100 times," and you lose yourself and you get caught up in it, and you're like, "Oh, is he going to get out? Is he going to do that?" And like at the very end, when the stuff goes off and half of Alcatraz is blown up, my mum's going, "Oh, he's dead. Oh God, he's dead." You're like, "Mum, you've seen this like 50, maybe 60 times. He's not dead." I always love that. That's a mark of a film that works. You can lose yourself up in that moment. But I do think this is a film that is well worth a watch. There's other Sean Connery films we will definitely recommend, but I think this is one. Don't get put off by the fact it's a Michael Bay film. Don't get put off, because I'm sorry, Joe, some people do get put off by the fact that they have Nick Cage going full Nick Cage.
It's their fault.
Yeah. Some people get put off by that, but I think this is well worth a watch. Darren, having watched this for the first time, granted, you're looking at it through 30-something-year-old eyes for yourself, and it's a film that was released, God, how many years ago now would it have been? 2020? Was that 24?
24 years ago, yeah.
So it's a film that's 20, and I think it holds up because there's not too much CGI. I think there's a lot of it is kind of the golden age of kind of Hollywood, kind of like big over the top practical effects. The car chase. Okay, yes, there's that street cart that kind of goes right up in the air, just over the top. But I don't think there's too much special effects in terms of stuff that did. I don't even stuff, the big explosion stuff at the end doesn't look too outdated. That's just me. But looking at it now, do you think this is, having watched this for the first time, would you say to people, yeah, give The Rock a viewing?
Yeah, 100%. Watching it, I was, as I said, I started it and I was like, this is ridiculous. This is, there's stuff in this that does not make sense. The car chase scene at the start. But then when I watched it, I just found myself warming to it. And I loved, like, looking back, talking with you guys as well, the dialogue is golden. It is well worth a Friday nights, buy a popcorn, a few beers for your mates and just watching it. Yeah, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, when you're sitting at home with the prom queen, it's well worth a watch.
Yeah.
Joe, you're the last one. Are you going to make it 3 for 3? I guess I know the answer, but a worthwhile watch kind of in the current lockdown situation we're in?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just to reiterate everything you've both been saying, like especially Darren, it's perfect Friday night entertainment. Just grab the popcorn, a few beers and the prom queen, and then you're all set,
Literally just grab her. You just sound, is that not something? Is grabbing? Is that not something that I was going to say gypsies, but that's not culturally appropriate. Yeah. That members of the traveling community do they not talking about grabbing?
Oh, I remember there was that show. What do you call it? Channel 4 one. What do you call it? Years ago, the Big Fat Gypsy Wedding. That's what sort of brought it to the fore. Well, maybe not in that sense, but like maybe in lockdown, if you're lonely, you get an inflatable prom queen of your own. You just sit her down beside you, have her wee tiara on, and go, here, sweetheart, we're just going to watch The Rock tonight. It's going to be magical. And then when that line comes on, you just give her luck,
That's you. You're just going to go, you know what, if you're just sitting there in your underpants with an inflatable prom queen with her tiara, you would just be like sitting there going, I'm a winner.
Oh, I. And
lockdown does crazy things to a man.
Pure. What was it? Rob Van Dam from WWE days, just going, I'm the winner.
Oh,
but anyway, I think on that note, we shall bring this to a close. Okay, so now this is part of the show just for our podcast listeners. It's just any other business. And this is where, very quickly, we're going to bring things. We're not going to go on too much. We're not going to talk too much more about inflatable prom queens, Muppet films, Muppet version of films. I will ask you maybe if you've thought any more films. I would love to see a Muppet version of Predator. I think I would love to see something like that. That would be good, just to kind of see the scenes, like like where the hands get blown off, and to see a little furry hand fall into the ground.
Often,
yeah, I would like to see that. So, if this is any other business, we can talk about this. We can talk about stuff you've watched, you've maybe liked. But I thought very quickly, we've been talking about The Rock, which is a Sean Connery film. Any other Sean Connery films, without going into too much detail, you'd maybe recommend our listeners give a watch?
And for me, I obviously, whenever I heard the news last week about his passing, I actually went out and watched Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade. Aside from Bond films, that's going to be the one he's maybe most remembered for, and I think he is brilliant in that. Just sort of ties up the series quite nicely. I know we have the fourth indie film, which I'm not going to talk about. I don't include that.
Can I just say one thing though, Darren? Sean Connery does make the greatest cameo appearance in that fourth Indiana Jones film, where it's just a photograph, which is clearly just a still from the last film, and it's like, how the fuck did you ever take that photograph? And it's like, he would have loved to have seen this, wouldn't he? And you're just like, no, No.
It's like the end of Cobra Kai series 2 with the text message. I'll not spoil that, but the same thing, just a text message from someone. Oh, right, okay. But yeah, definitely it ties it up. I don't count the fourth film in the canon. I know it was ridiculous, but there you go. There's your story coming. But I remember.
Sorry, hang on a minute. Hang on. Listeners, get ready. It's another Darren Vincent original story.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to pay someone to make a proper jingle for Darren Vincent stories.
When you talked about that film, it gives me flashbacks because whenever right, there we go. When did that come out? Crystal Skull. I think it was 2005. It was released, right? I'm just Googling it here now. This is terrible radio. Or sorry, terrible podcasting. But I think I was about 15, maybe 16. And I, being a young fella that I was, I'd never really been on dates or anything before, but I had a friend of a friend that was like, oh, you should, go to the cinema with this girl. We went to the cinema, me and my mate and this girl and one of her friends, and we sort of went and went their separate ways. Girl I got paired with didn't speak a single word, right? We got the movie House Dublin Road at like 1 o'clock. The film didn't start at 3, so I thought that maybe not 3, maybe like an hour later. I was like, that's plenty of time to get some chat in. 1 hour of looking out the window upstairs in the cinema. And then that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the film, because the film was just terrible. And then having to come out, and then another hour of silence while my mate was off with some girl having the day of his life. He really loved the film and the company, but anytime I think of Indiana Jones, I always think of that Saturday where I spent in like 4 hours silence because I did not react once to that film. So yeah, that's my story. That's all I'm gonna say on it.
This is the thing. Like, did you get any information out of her? Did you get at least names? Did you get kind of?
Well, yeah, I knew her name, but I think it was just like how you getting on. Like
So what is your kind of pre-cinema date night? What's your banter, Darren?
What's my banter? Like, what do you mean?
What's your banter? What's your kind of strategy? You're sitting there you've got an hour to kill. What are you going to say? What are you going to talk about? You're going to talk I'm going to imagine back then you still are. Are you bringing in wrestling? Do you watch wrestling? Do you like any of that?
Yeah.
Was it going that bad? Where you're just like, do you like stuff?
It was, yeah. I can't remember what I was asking, but it was like, oh, did you, what was the commute like? Did you get in okay? How did you get here?
Commute.
What he's doing?
Well, hang on, how old were you? Were you 90? Were you a 90-year-old man?
Just asking, what you thought of, the United match and stuff, and but no, it was just kind of chatting. It was like, oh yeah, this, what's your friend up to? What do they like? Blah blah. It was awful, but I just remember sitting staring out at that road that sort of takes you towards the Europa and just watching traffic for an hour, just sitting in silence with a bag of minstrels.
So hang on, maybe it was actually you, Darren. Was it a terrible date?
It's my biggest fear. Maybe it was.
Do you not think that a little bit, Joe? Like, instead of like at least talking to this girl, he just kind of do like Joey in that episode of Friends when he's looking down the kind of the not the mirror thing, but the kind of the piece of art that he gets with the water running down it, where he's just like, she's like going to go and like, yeah, so I don't know, were you still at school at this time? Will you still be at school?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, GCSEs, A levels, and Darren's just like,
Funny you say that, because afterwards, like, I think she deleted her Facebook and everything, and like,
Jesus,
she moved school and stuff. So, well, that's what her friend told me. I did see her again a few weeks later, but she maybe hadn't moved on yet. But I don't know.
You hurt this poor girl.
I've had a date. Like, I mean, I've had a pretty bad date. The worst ever. Like, I think I was kind of in that time. My one kind of dabblement with online dating, I think, would have been the horrors of Plenty of Fish back in this is way back. And I remember taking a girl, I think it was the Odyssey. I can't remember what film it was. I genuinely can't remember what film it was. And we'd met, and she was pretty hot. I think, she was a pretty hot woman, hot girl. And halfway through the film, she was just like, I'm just going to go. Didn't even want to finish the rest of the film. She just got up and left, and she's like, I'm going to go. And then she kind of into like that she wanted me to come too. And you're like, well, I'm here to watch the film. I'm gonna watch the film. Bye. She's like, I don't feel too great. I think I might go home. You're like, all right, bye. And that was that. That's the only the only other one I can think of in terms of a date was I remember once going to the movie house and it was a girl from school, and I'm still friends with her. But she's not the one that got away. Don't worry, listeners. And she hadn't seen her, and I bumped into her at Queen's, and she's like, "Oh, hi, great to see you from school and stuff. Do you want to go out? Do you fancy going to cinema some night?" She made all the moves. She played me like a fiddle, and I was like, "Yeah." We walked down, and I didn't realize I had forgot my wallet. I'd left it at the dorm, and we got down, and she has still to this day, every so often when we talk once in a blue moon, maybe at Christmas when we're back home in Oma, and you kind of say, "No, bet you never did that with Amber," or anything like that. You're like, "No," because she had to pay. And it's like, that was it.
Oh, dear.
That was it. Come on, Joe. Tell us your...
Oh. Well, I wouldn't really describe it as a date scenario as such, but it happened when I was a teenager. It was with... it was back home, and we were going to the cinema. Me and my cousin and I was like, "Oh, we're going to see The Bourne Identity. Can't wait to see Bourne Identity." He turns around to me last minute because he's seen some girls from secondary school, and he's like, "Oh, they're going to see Signs. Let's go see Signs with them." I was like, I don't want to watch Signs. I want to watch Bourne Identity. And I was just heartbroken over this, but he was like really game to go with the girls from secondary school and chance his arm with them. And I was like, but I heard it's scary. I don't really like scary films. So went in anyway. He taught me, and went into, and the whole film I was on edge, going, I shouldn't be here. This is too much for me, because I never watched horror up to this point. How times have changed and all that. But I was just pure shitting myself.
You were Darren. You were pretty much like Darren is now.
Yeah, essentially. And at one point, one of the girls, I think, they turned and looked at my cousin and sort of gave him the eye, as if the signal was like, "Here, come on with me to the front row here, and we're gonna have a wee shipping session." So I was on my own.
I'm sorry, a what?
Hang on a minute.
Hang on.
Where we come from, we call home with each other shifting. All right,
shift. Give us a shift there, love.
Hang on. I didn't even get past the flipping seats beside the tuck shop. Never mind to the front row. So hang on. Tell me what this means.
Well, no, literally, I don't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant then. I don't know what it means now. But it's literally, there was like an unspoken thing where they made eye contact and they had a wee whisper, and then next thing you know, they both got up from their seats and they both went to the front row and proceeded.
Surely you'd go to the back row.
I know, but it was taken apparently. So they didn't.
Someone was already getting a shift up there.
Yeah, pretty much. They didn't give a fiddlers, and they started eating the face of each other, whereas I was sitting there just shitting myself. And then the girl that was with the other girl my cousin went away with, she ended up sitting beside me, and I was like, I can't deal with this film anymore. And I think it was the scene where I think it's like there's the found footage of the birthday party in Brazil, and the alien just walks past. Yeah. That scared the living hell out of me. I was like, I'm going. I can't sit here anymore. And then she was like really worried about me, going, "Are you okay?" It's like, "No, I'm not okay. I can't watch this." And then I left. But the thing is, I was staying at my cousin's that night, so I had to wait for him. So I was waiting outside it, and then I was even checking my watch, going, "Could I sneak into the Bourne Identity?" But then I thought, no, I have to get home with him. I'll just sit here and be miserable. So that was as close as to a horrible dating experience that I had, and of course it made its way to the secondary school come Monday. So I got dogs abuse for weeks on end because of it.
Because you didn't get a shift in?
No, because I walked out of Signs.
You could have done that thing, they do in the 90s TV shows, like Saved by the Bell, where you have two dates at the same time.
Yeah,
so you can sit with her for 5 minutes and then go next door and watch The Bourne Identity.
I really should have done that.
But Darren, the only thing was, Joe's other date was just an inflatable prom queen.
I would have gladly went to the Bourne Identity with the inflatable prom queen. Would have had a ball of a time.
Which one was this? Which Bourne film was this? Sorry.
Oh, the first one, because they were both.
Yeah. It's good, but it's not great. It's not the sequels.
But this is like 11, 12-year-old. No, would actually be a bit older than that.
Darren, very quickly, before we kind of get back to actually talking about Sean Connery and any other business, what's your version of shifting? What kind of because
terminology.
Because I don't know. The only other ones I know from Belfast is lumber or anything like that, or getting.
Hang on, lumber.
Right, I'm not joking. I never knew this. Right, I would always say when I was working at home base, I remember once very vividly, there was this girl was sitting down, and there was myself. We were the two designers in the place for doing kitchens, and there was myself and Anthony. And Anto had got this customer in. He'd done all the preliminary stuff with her, but he got busy. He got called away. And I turned around to this girl, and she was a good-looking girl. I mean, she was a good-looking woman. She would have been older than me. And I turned around to her, and I was like, oh, well, I guess you're lumbered with me then. Thinking just, that's it, you're stuck with me. And this girl was like, literally, now, this is an audio medium, but I know we're recording in Zoom, but I'll give you an idea. So she literally just like, and I'm like, whoa, what the fuck did I say? And Rosie, my then manager, was kind of like, I could hear her like laughing, and she's like, Jim, giving someone a lumber means something very different up here than it does back in Tyrone where you're from. You're like, okay, what does it mean? And that's when I was told, apparently if you ask for a lumber, it's a kiss. I didn't know this until I moved to Belfast. There's lumber, I know. Back, I suppose the only kind of thing I can think of back, I never really think I had a term like getting a shift in, was, court. Gives a curt, big girl.
Oh, curt.
Gives a curt, but I don't think I ever had a thing. But Darren, what was yours that you?
I don't really have anything, but I do remember when I was younger, I used to go to my family when my aunt married a Geordie, so like they all moved over to Newcastle. I remember we were over in Newcastle and we were down at the beach one time, like a Whitley Bay or something like that. And I went up to the ice cream stand and asked the woman for a poke. And apparently they don't call it pokes over there. So like, I can still remember that woman's face. I was like 15. I was like, can I have a poke? And she was like, what? It was like, the only in-betweeners and J's around trying to find it. Yeah, that was very similar.
I want a poke, please.
Yeah. Another time when we were in Florida, my dad tells the story. I was only about 6, but he said he was going up to the food stand or like a wee sort of tuck shop type thing, and he was trying to get candy floss, and the woman behind the counter was called Flossie, and he was asking her like, "Could I get a big bag of candy floss?" And she was like, "What bag do you want, sir? What type of candy?" And he goes, "Candy floss." And the whole thing, like, then he realized her name was Flossie, so he thought that she was being called that. But the poke's definitely the worst.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's just the innocence, just all coming oozing out of you and just asking for a big old poke, love. Can I have some sauce on top of it, please? With a red sauce? No. Anyway, right, okay, let's move away. So, Sean Connery movies. Remember where we were talking about that a long time ago? I know the one I mentioned when we were discussing films to talk about, or a film to talk about. Of course, the obvious ones are Bond. Joe, you are our Bond expert, so I mean, I'm sure there'll be films within Connery's tenure that you'll definitely recommend. There's some obvious ones, but The Man Who Would Be King is a film I absolutely, and I think it's Sean Connery's. I think it's his favorite with Michael Caine. I think it's one of his favorite roles. It's longish. I think it's 2.5. I think it's slightly. I think it's 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and it's well worth a watch. And particularly if you're interested in kind of ideas of religion and all that kind of stuff and how it can be abused and kind of using faith and stuff. It's a brilliant film. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I know with the sad news about the passing of Sean Connery, I have it in DVD here somewhere behind me. I know that might be a Criterion. I'm not sure. I might definitely give it another view, and it's a film I absolutely love. Indiana Jones, as you mentioned, The Hunt for Red October, I think we mentioned at some point earlier on as well. The Untouchables, of course, so many great ones. The man just had a very impressive back catalogue of work, and there is so many to choose from. But Joe, anything particularly, any of the Bond films of Connery's tenure you would pick out?
Well, I think the Bond film from his era that really defined it is Goldfinger. That's when he fully settled into the role. The charisma of the character was there, the cold-bloodedness element. The quips were in full flow, and it was just like a checkbox of what Bond should be. It came out through that film, and it was mostly through his performance. So in terms of the Bonds, that's definitely a top tier. But one that I know, the one that really got me into Bond itself, and then subsequently Connery, was You Only Live Twice, just because of how over the top and that it was.
There's problems with that old film.
Yes, I was going to say, but it's a very problematic element to the plot. And then when you actually look back at, you know, that plot element where he had to make himself Japanese, you realize he didn't need to do that at all, because it has no bearing on anything that comes after in the film.
It also, if I remember, has in the opening line, "Why do Chinese girls taste different?" And you're like,
yeah, it's like, Sean, I know that swings in the 60s, but not really anymore. But probably, you know, when I was doing my rewatch during lockdown of the Bonds, one of the ones that, you know, really caught that I didn't really appreciate fully when I was younger was From Russia with Love. It's top Connery, it's top you know, it's really an espionage film first, and it's a lot. But the thing I loved it more than anything was how low key it was. Yes, you do have the lovely, production design and the the sort of globetrotting, all that there's there, but it's not a big elaborate thing, you know, like it's not a big world domination thing. It's basically just somebody's out to eliminate Bond.
Yeah. When I was younger, Goldfinger was probably my favorite Bond. You know, before you kind of realize kind of like those were released years ago, before you kind of comprehend that idea, that was my favorite Bond. From rewatching them, not on DVD, although I have them on DVD. I think ITV for a while was showing them on a Saturday night during lockdown. It might have actually been pre-lockdown. They were showing them, and anytime I rewatch From Russia with Love, I think it is very quickly becoming one of my favorite Bonds. Yeah. Just for like the immortal stuff at the end about how a true Englishman would never order red wine with fish. Because
I know, it's perfect.
That's how you know. That's how you always know. If you're dealing with a spy, offer them some fish. Would you like red wine or white wine? And I don't like the Matt Monroe song, I have to admit, From Russia. I don't think it's a great Bond song, but I absolutely love From Russia with Love. Because it's the second. There's Dr. No, then From Russia with Love.
Yeah.
Is it Goldfinger's third?
Yeah, Goldfinger, then Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, and then he went away for one, came back with Diamonds Are Forever.
Thunderball is the Bond I don't like.
It's average. It's just an average.
Do you know what? I know we mentioned this earlier on. I actually prefer Never Say Never Again, although Connery's too old. Connery's too old by the time to do that. You know, he's like trying to seduce Kim Basinger. But I think for what it is, I think it's slightly more fun than Thunderball. But I know there's problems. It doesn't have the budget. It doesn't have the budget or anything like that. The look, the quintessential look of 007, it looks more like those... what do you call the ones that Dean Martin, the Bond ripoffs that Dean Martin was in?
There were Dean Martin ripoffs of Bond?
Yeah, I'll find it and send it to you, Joe. It's a whole thing. I think it's Dean Martin. I think it's Dean Martin. Is it? This may or may not make the cut. This is in the podcast. I can edit this easier. This one, but there's like a Dean Martin kind of Bond. Kind of piss take rip off, and that's what Never Say Never Again looks like. But anyway,
I like coming on here. I always get some takeaway homework, so that's good.
There you go, Joe. Do you want to give Darren any takeaway homework?
Roar.
He's still working on the other homework I've assigned him. You know, the list of horror films he has to get through. So
how many of those have you got through, Darren?
That's like a dissertation. I need to check the list, but I did watch The Shining a few weeks back.
Very good.
Like just before Halloween, I did see.
Was that on BBC Two? Did you watch it?
On iPlayer. Yeah, it was on the iPlayer before, but the Babadook was on the iPlayer, and it was too. I think that's on your list as well. But I was like, that's 2021, Darren. You know, that's not 2020, Darren.
Okay, so we're in the circuit breaker, Darren. 2021's a long time away. You know, you might just on a desperate night with your inflatable prom queen, just be like, let's watch this, baby.
That's it. I'll probably need to puncture a pair of kits. I'll be squeezing so hard. I'll be that scared. It'll be like, oh God. I said the word squeezing so hard and Joe's glasses fell off. So.
Will you have a picture of Jet on the front on like a picture of Jet stuck to your prom queen.
Yeah,
And
it'll be like a screenshot, like a Sean Connery screenshot in the Crystal Skull from an episode of Gladiators.
It's a beautiful image. Just keep that puncher repair kit and have a wee pump as well.
Yeah, well, I'll put a shift in.
Even get a lumber. Yeah. So on that note, thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Darren.
We'll be back next week with another podcast. Thanks for listening, guys. If you've enjoyed this randomness, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast and fix. And if you want to help us out and help us find new listeners and attract new listeners to such comedy gold as this from Darren and Joe, then leave us a lovely review, and that helps us attract new listeners. But for now, until next week, goodbye.
This has been We Need to Talk About Movies. Thanks for listening. For more information, visit BanterFlix.com. See you next time.